What were you doing up there?
I'll tell you in the car. Come on.
Is 50 years a long time?
I don't think so.
Welcome back to the harbor, the most patrician internet show of all time. Nothing beats us. I'm here with Casher, the Boston Flasher, Scott, the no longer expat, and we got Sam, who's just Sam, Maximus Simpus. All right. Today we are talking about my boy Steven Spielberg. Him and I go way back. You might know I'm not Jewish, but him and I are tight as fuck. Grew up with him. Well, his movies at least. Big time influenced by Indiana Jones, Close Encounters, E.T., etc., etc. This is his film. We're talking about Artificial Intelligence, which is kind of a polarizing movie, and it fucked with me as a kid. And then I rewatched it as a young adult, and my opinion changed on it. And now I watched it as an older adult, an elder millennial, if you will, and now my opinion has changed again. So, Scott, you didn't grow up watching this movie. I want to hear your take first.
You want to hear my take first? I was going to let you guys. I dug the fuck out of it.
Hey.
Okay, and here's the thing, and we'll get into this.
Nice.
I liked it until the controversial ending, and then I loved it because I think it all came together. I think a lot of people think it should have ended, spoilers for this 20-year-old movie, it should have ended when he was stuck at the bottom of the ocean. I think everything that happens in the last 20 to 30 minutes ties it together thematically, and I think audiences didn't understand, weren't prepared for, and were afraid of the dark existential implications of this movie.
So yeah, no, absolutely. So just a little backstory on this movie. This movie was started back in like the 70s, being written by Kubrick. And Kubrick, a lot of people misinterpret what Spielberg did and what Kubrick did. And reading in the interviews and stuff, Spielberg's the one who did all the darker shit, all the stuff with like the flesh fairs, these like pleasure cities, things like that. That was Spielberg. So a lot of people were like, oh yeah, he just did the sappy shit. No, everything from when David is brought into the family and then the last 20 minutes of the movie are all Kubrick, is what he said.
I heard the first act, basically that first hour or whatever, up until leaving him on the side of the road.
Yeah.
Is word for word Kubrick. And this is Spielberg's first writing credit since Poltergeist. 20 years prior. And it is a thing. Like, he started, I mean, it had already been in script and production, on and off, development hell. But Kubrick, this was a pet project of his, and when Kubrick died in 99, Spielberg took it upon himself to finish this vision for his friend, which actually ties in kind of nice thematically with the movie.
Yeah, I think it's really well done. I think it's a good blend of the two directors and their styles for sure.
It's imperfect in
just like they are
details, and you can see, especially one thing, John Williams' score is good in this, but sometimes I don't know if tonally it's the right messaging. I know that Spielberg and John Williams are pals, and also I don't know if you could get John Williams to score your movie, why you wouldn't, because he's fucking John Williams,
right?
Invented modern movie scoring. But
John Williams.
I think that John Williams' score is good for this movie, and because it changes after he leaves the house, and
there's a lot of flavor to
the first act of the movie, there's this very distinct world of wonder kind of sound that he's going for, learning and figuring out, and it really works. It makes the first act even more surreal and dreamy than it already is. And then of course this is a postmodern fairy tale, so it kind of works in this weird warped ass way. But what were you were saying about the ending and people weren't ready for it? 13-year-old Adrian was not ready for it. That scared the shit out of me and caused me to have way too many ideas and existential freak out. And
The shit that scared me most growing up was like the flesh fair shit, like seeing the
really?
robots get destroyed. Like
That's so funny because all the fucked up shit you watch, Sam. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, like
you've been watching torture porn movies since you were in the womb.
Yeah, that's fair. But no, it's one of those things like when I see like, you know, limbs falling off, or even robots like missing pieces, like when
robot Chris Rock getting shot.
But like, well, and then like his face hits like right there in front of him. Like that's terrifying for the kid.
I think the most disturbing part of that flesh fair part is the guy who's like, can someone undo my pain receptors?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then as he's being walked out to what is essentially a crucifix, he's like, basically like, I can still work. My lamp doesn't work, but I can still work. I promise. And he's like
it's like on the outside, the movie is like cute and charming, but like it's everything in it's like it's a bit fucked up. It's like everything.
Even just like the background of like what happened, like the movie starts with like them talking about the world being flooded.
Yeah, the world's like mostly gone. Like,
which at the time, I was
went over my head when I was younger.
Well, no, I was having problems growing up with things not adding up when it came to religion and stuff, and I was having internal freakouts that I couldn't process properly because I was a kid and didn't know until I was an adult what was really going on with me. And so like we had a lot of natural disasters in the 2000s, and then they showed me an inconvenient truth in science class, and I was like fucking freaked out because I was like, well, this seems to be shit that's happening, but this doesn't align with what I've read in the Bible and stuff like that. So I was all sorts of fucked up. So the global warming aspect of it freaked me out even more, which I loved it, but I also was creeped out by it as a kid. And
I certainly share the same sentiments towards like trauma from like global change and environment stuff, like being subject to such like
good thing we fixed it.
But being subject to such things on the news and then going through science courses in like elementary school, even that, like that's why like politically I align with like the Green Party, and I really care about the conservation of the planet and natural energy and shit like that, because after that, I mean, if we ruin the planet, how are we going to make more movies? Shit like all back to that. But,
and now for a word from our sponsors, Jill Stein 2024, everybody.
No, hang on now. No.
But no, like, yeah, I've always been like you've been uber aware of shit. Like I've always been uber aware of that. And it's just.
Yeah, the only thing that scared me like that growing up was the Mayan doomsday calendar.
2012. I'm gonna die.
2012.
I'm gonna die in my senior year.
We did die in
December
2012.
2012. I was having panic attacks in my front yard in the summer.
Were you really?
Yeah. I read a book about it.
I mean, I was just really hoping that we were going to get a zombie apocalypse. Like, I'm still hoping for that.
Our original timeline got fucked up thanks to CERN. We got split into something, and they had to place us on a new timeline that's just similar enough to where Chick-fil-A is spelled Chick.
That's only us, dude. That's only me and you, Adrian. No one else thinks that Chick-fil-A shit. We're from a different timeline.
I know.
Staying Bears.
No, Chick-fil-A always had a K.
No, it did not.
Chick-fil-A has a K in it?
Yeah. Isn't that weird?
Shit.
Yeah. What's weird is it's after the A.
Me and Cash are from a timeline where it's CHIC-FIL-A, and it always fucked with me.
That would be Chic-fil-A.
I know, but that's the thing. It always fucked with me. I was always like, why isn't there a fucking K there? That always bothered me growing up, and now there's a K suddenly, and it's fucking weird. And
I said that to Adrian like late one night, and we've still not gotten over it. Like it's been a few months now.
This is the Mandela Effect episode.
Yeah, Mandela cast.
Man, I want to get back to what we were talking about. The whole concept of children robots is fucking insane. It's like the darkest part of like it's like beautiful but dark. Like the concept of it, like being able to have, if your child is in a coma, like the child is in the family that gets the very first David model, and you're able to almost replace them. Like seeing that dynamic work out when the child comes back.
That kid was a fucking brat, like for no goddamn reason.
That's the
yeah, but
kid.
if
That's
you
the-
came
imagine?
home, if you came home and you were replaced by a robot, you wouldn't feel fucking pissed off. I would.
Especially because the concept of robots to him aren't as like family members; they're as toys or help.
that he can like abuse.
It's a fucked up dynamic, but he doesn't know any better.
Yeah.
And then you have like, for one, I just want to say that is the kid brother from Lizzie McGuire.
Oh yeah.
Which always used to trip me out as a real young kid, being like, whoa, what? But like them testing the limits of what the robot can do, which inevitably leads to him almost drowning the child in a sense of trying to protect itself.
Yeah, wasn't quite ready for full production, I guess. Also, it doesn't help that the movie starts with the professor with all of his colleagues pondering shit and saying like, oh, didn't God create Adam to love him and stuff, you know? That's what it starts with.
Pretty egotistical.
And that's the thing. This movie is about creation, and parenthood is egotistical. But we're driven to that biologically by our own biological programming. And that's what this movie is about. Now, I took it as somebody, I'm not a substance dualist, meaning I do not believe in a soul. I believe everything about us is biologically programmed. We are essentially ones and zeros organically.
What a fun guy.
Yeah, I know. It's,
makes sense. It makes sense.
So, and I mean, viewing it through that lens, which I think is quite probably the lens that Kubrick wanted it to be viewed through.
Yeah.
I mean, everything about love is, and this gets thrown in or highlighted with Joe, the hooker robot, the Gigolo
Joe, bro.
With dude, he looks like Robbie Rotten from Lazy.
Yeah, he does.
He looks I was seriously expecting to hear immediately as soon as I saw him step on screen. That's the scariest part of this movie. Rip Robbie Rotten, you know.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. But that was I talking. Oh, even something like Love, you could argue from a very cynical way. And this movie goes deeper in on it than I think something like Rick and Morty does. But it's just programming to make us reproduce. And the only reason we have that programming is because, like, from a Darwinian perspective, if we didn't have that, some sort of urge to reproduce, our species would not continue, you know, and the only reason we exist is because we have evolved to exist, and there's really nothing else. And so this question, and we'll get to this I have so many notes about this. My brain, I couldn't sleep for like an hour last night because I was thinking about this movie.
That's awesome.
Honestly,
that's what you want, dude.
I was into it. This movie hit on a lot of stuff it's a strongly, in a way, atheistic movie.
This is one of the first real science fiction films that I got into as a kid. I watched this back when I was probably around like when it came out. My dad rented this from me for the Blockbuster, and I rented this probably 10 more times. I've seen this movie a lot.
It's like, and as you get older and like, I don't want to say like more jaded, but like more aware of things, the world, it hits different, like Adrian said, at different levels and different aspects in your life.
Sure. And what Scott was talking about, how, you know, the cold mechanical aspect of the side of things, you know, ones and zeros of human nature. That's why I like that it really is that, but it blends it with this dreamy, fantasy, atmospheric,
happy,
it's childlike. It's
childlike, yeah, and it's got like all the like the bloom lighting and shit, and like all the it just feels like straight out of like a dream you have on like a Sunday at like 2:00, and you wake up sweating, and you're like, what the fuck?
The only way to find truth is to blend fairy tales with fact. Because if you take hard fact, it's like when you went to Dr. No.
Shout out Robin Williams, fucking tight.
Because Google doesn't exist because they've commodified it, because they had search engines in 2001. That was like,
yeah.
There's something. Also, I was like, do they not have a GPS tracking on this robot? I guess they did. They were just letting him do his thing. They were watching him.
Well, they even said that,
yeah. They but the whole idea that, like, to find the answer that they're looking for everybody has to rationalize their own existence and find some sort of purpose. Because if you don't, you go insane. And I struggle with that a lot of what's the point of anything, you know? So David, to an almost comical degree, is fixated on this fantasy, which is religion. It's art, it's love, it's all these things that we construct. And that's a theme. You even have Joe hanging outside the church, and he said they leave church and then normally they find me. They look for God and they end up finding me.
Well, you know, I just want to say something. It's most religions. We do know that Christ is king on this podcast.
Okay, right.
Not mine.
And Joseph Smith is the true prophet.
Which I guess we can go ahead and say that Haley Joel Osment is a fucking talented motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like
Aka.
kid actors, you know, sometimes with kid actors, you kind of just have to, you know, suspend your disbelief a little bit, you know. But this kid almost does it too well.
Nails
And
it.
he was kind of off-putting, too much so for some people. I can see why they were they had resistance towards this, because I mean it is freaky and so
Side
real.
note,
Yeah,
It's
people don't
actually
like
really real.
scary thoughts, and if you have a robot child acting this childlike, it's gonna freak people out, just like it literally does in the
Yeah.
movie at the Flesh Fair.
side note, Haley Joel Osment practiced not blinking to be like that. He stopped blinking for a while, like just forced himself not to blink for as long as possible.
Took a
to be
step
as
from the
unsettling.
T1000.
Yeah, right. And it's just to be as unsettling and fucking almost like
Fucking awesome is what it is.
yeah, he's like what, like 10 years old in this, 12 years
Yeah.
old.
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy to think. He went from Sixth Sense to this.
Yeah,
And
then
when
The
yoga
ghost of
hosers.
Stanley Kubrick was going to beat him if he didn't do the role well.
Following this movie is, I actually wasn't super emotionally invested until the ending. And I was interested, and part of that was taking notes for this podcast. So my relationship with the movie is a bit different when I'm watching it for a podcast, but slightly, not too much. It's really interesting that the movie really follows non-human characters with non-human emotions and non-human motivations, and then asks the audience to relate to them. And it really
And it
puts
works.
at the forefront that they are not human. You know, it's not even like Terminator 2 where you have humans with non-human characters. It's like, here's this robot kid and a gigolo Joe, and for the
And a
bulk
teddy
of the
bear.
movie, you're just following them with
Right.
no real human companions
Yeah,
and trying to parse what their programming is and
Here's
what
the
their
thing.
prime directive is.
here's the thing. This is not new for Kubrick. My favorite, I will say this outright on the podcast right now, my favorite scene in all of cinema is in 2001: A Space Odyssey, when he is shutting down Hal and Hal is dying,
Please
but
don't.
he is just a computer program, and I am welling up with tears despite him just being an artificially intelligent computer program. And the fact that Kubrick made me feel this way about a non-human character is insane and
Mhm.
fucking incredible. And so it doesn't shock me that he was doing the same thing with this before, of course, Spielberg took it on. But I think it's very profound that we can, as humans, feel for robots, even in movies.
Well, it's like even just to bring them up on topic of that, there's scenes in the movie where like most of the humans are the enemy. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of what it's like. The humans, the creator, are the enemy. But there's scenes where like in the Flesh Fair where he's begging for his life. Please don't burn me. Please don't burn me. I'm a kid. I'm a kid. And the whole audience is just like, robots don't beg. Like
Yeah.
they don't care if it is a robot. They start to empathize with it when it's starting to beg for when
He
they
really challenged those conservative hicks, didn't he?
Right. No, I like that the farmer is the one who first pelts the guy. You think he's going to be some like redneck, because that's a MAGA rally. That's like a Kid Rock music.
Yeah.
It was like Kid Rock.
Yeah, that was such. They even have the early 2000s music.
I thought it
like,
was
yeah, this is
Kid
a
Rock
Dude,
until it
the
wasn't.
fucking Ministry plays music in that movie.
Yeah.
Ministry toured with fucking Death Grips, and I saw them in 2017, and I put the
go.
2 and 2 together this time. I was
Another
like, what
connection.
the fuck?
Apparently, I was just reading. Apparently Kubrick had the idea to put him in there because some guy was on the set of Eyes Wide Shut playing their music, and Kubrick liked that they sampled something from Full Metal Jacket in one of their songs.
That's fucking awesome.
And he was like, "Hey, I like these guys are cool. They got good taste. They like
You
my
guys
stuff."
like me. I like
Literally
them.
best case scenario for fucking sampling someone else's work.
He's like, "Hey, let me put you in a Spielberg movie." Okay. But apparently we're still around in 2100 or whenever this it is 22nd.
2142, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The something like that. The thing is with that scene, I mean, so many of these questions, and I feel like a lot of movies with robots ask these questions just in a much sloppier form or in a lazier, more direct form. So much of that is like, well, how much if we can't see inside somebody, which they actually do the X-ray thing, they do the X-ray thing where they see inside him and see that he's circuitry. And so if you can't see inside somebody, which nobody can see inside anybody else's thoughts, all you can rely upon is these external factors. And so again, we get into this process like, all we are information processing units, and we recognize certain stimuli and have an emotional response based on that. Which, that sounds like I'm really taking it to the extreme with this thing, but I mean, what is the difference if you program a kid to affect people? You know, we're going to in our lifetime see people fall in love with companion robots.
Right.
That's we already have like sex robots and people with relationships.
Yeah, there's
that guy
who married his Nintendo DS like 10 years ago.
Yeah, dude. You know, I would marry Nintendo DS probably, but that's funny. But it's one of those things where does it matter if somebody is able to marry a robot, let's say, and that it actually helps them be a productive member of society? Does it matter? But then does it matter that they're a productive member of society? Are we this agrarian culture where everybody needs to pull their weight or else they have no right to exist? And also this is about, let's talk about labor. This is about people's search for meaning. Everybody has this hole in their heart because, I mean, we're just these animals, and people use vocations as a search for meaning. And even you have that nanny robot who is programmed to be a nanny. So even when she's melting from acid, she's smiling at David because she is programmed to be a nanny. Okay, that is her job. And people have lost all meaning because these robots have taken some of their jobs. Okay, and we don't see a lot of there's probably great inequality in the society. Obviously, there's been population loss and but there's probably great inequality in this society because although initially people needed robots for this thing, we know robots have been around at least 75 years because one says, I was the model of Time magazine, 75. Also, I think it's funny people are still reading newspapers in this movie, but okay. But that was the most unbelievable sci-fi part for me. But the thing is, we don't know what the average life is like because obviously they've rebuilt society to a large degree. Okay, it's no longer apocalyptic. It's effed up. It's dystopian in many regards, but it's not apocalyptic. So people have become so alienated from their labor, and people themselves have become so redundant. They have also lost all identity, which is something we'll also probably see in our lifetime, and are seeing as many jobs get automated.
Yeah. And also that scene in particular at the Flush Fair with when he's in the cage with all the robots was making me wonder, like, what are there varying levels of sentience for a lot of these different robots? And does that make it any more or less fucked up what's going on? Because, you know, obviously David's one of the most advanced ever made. But I don't know. It's just
they speak on this thing called the Trevor incident right as they're about to pick up Gigolo Joe. And so I think that they're supposed to make sure that whatever is sentient is not sent, or I guess any robot's good, but they do measure sort of what the establishments are. Because I know that they were like convinced that you know, David was a child for a second. And then they check.
I think this Trevor incident was actually they just accidentally killed a real person.
Yeah.
But yeah, like why wouldn't they check the, you know, like do the X-ray?
I know, I was thinking more of like how it corresponds to because I mean, Gigolo Joe, he's got, you know, he's pretty self-aware. There's some stuff that he just doesn't understand, but he gets it more than most when he sits down at Dr. No and tells David how it is. He's like, look, this is how we're programmed. This is what's going on. Here's the truth. You know, he's not.
That part hurts too.
It does hurt, but
but he's a robot that has to interact with people and has to interact with them emotionally, and is designed to soothe people emotionally as well as sexually. But even that, it's kind of like a fuckboy thing of, I don't know, it's like what's his name in Kids being like, I love you, baby, we can where I'll be with you forever. It's just a means to an end, and it's just their programming
for his own survival.
Fun fact about Gigolo Joe, Jude Law studied Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly.
That's awesome.
That performance.
That probably makes sense why he's tap dancing. He's really, it's weird, it's off-putting, it's cheesy, but it's kind of supposed to be. And you can argue the direction whether or not it works, but he is really good in this.
Well, I think it works, like especially thematically at the beginning when they're like, we've gone from sex robots to a kid robot, and you get that parallel right there. So
yeah, it's true. But also, what
I was gonna say, I think there's also like, we haven't touched on it yet, but like all the media that this movie itself influences later on. Like I was getting a lot of like Detroit Become Human vibes, especially like with them tossing out robots, you know, and then
the parts back, like going, I was seeing the same.
I was thinking of that, and then I was thinking of, it's not, you know, about AI and stuff, but I was thinking Rian Johnson must have taken inspiration from Jude Law in this role for Joe and Looper, because Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Joe, they just kind of have that same like look and feel. But yeah, I mean, and then there's
in what way? Because I don't really see that.
I don't. It's just like his style. Maybe it's not like the character, but maybe Joseph Gordon-Levitt liked Jude Law's performance. I just feel like Joe in this movie is kind of similar to Joe in Looper, especially when he's like out having fun, you know, and not old Joe, not Bruce Willis Joe, but
it's fascinating. I do wonder if David or even Joe, if they were given like a proper education and brought up in society like a normal person, if their technology would allow them to advance and learn and become even more artificially intelligent or not.
David, like they even say like he only bonds with one person. After that person's dead, there's nothing else for him to do. You're supposed to bring him.
Yeah, but like, what if they like didn't have him imprint on somebody? I don't know. Like, could this technology be? I
mean, I think, as we know, like,
do you think David is like as human as he can be, or do you think it can go further?
Well, it gets further in the end.
It definitely gets further.
But it's part of the thing is that's special about David. It's not just his ability to love, it's an ability to dream. So I think the Blue Fairy thing, it was an effort to get back to his original programming of having mommy love me, of his original prime directive. But the fact that he was able to make his own goal and make his own dream based off an original program as something and imagine something, that was one of the things that makes him special. And that he was able to adapt like that. Because you could argue a lot of the other, they have survival mechanisms. They're obviously running because they don't want to die because they're programmed to survive. And you don't have hard laws of robotics like in Asimov, you know? And
I noticed that too.
I almost think part of that is I always thought Asimov's so funny unintentionally because he's such a fucking nerd. He would see all these evil AI stories and he's such a nerd. He'd just be like, why don't you just engineer it so it can't be evil? Like he's just, because I have a PhD. But I almost think part of it is like you have so many different manufacturers and things. It's like you have NVIDIA and Radeon and AMD and like all these things. Or it's like, you know, you have Volvo and Ford and all these different things and all the parts don't mix and they have different firmware. So I think because they mentioned different companies, I wonder if that's just part of it.
They mentioned a lot of different cybernetic companies at one point.
Yeah, because they mentioned there's like, which one are you from? This one?
Yeah,
you know?
I was like, holy shit.
I mean, how many different operating systems are there? You know, just in general. I mean, between desktops, different kernels of Linux, mobile phones, proprietary operating systems for like game consoles and different hardware, there's a million things.
Why did they even program David to be able to have a throat that can swallow shit? Just like
I was actually
block
thinking
it off.
that was I mean, why don't you just have that? I think that's honestly just a cinematic.
Well,
thing,
sure.
so
Maybe it's fucking arrogance, and the professor wants to be God, and he wants it to be as similar as possible.
Well, the professor does want to be God.
Also,
because God created man, and then man invented God and searched for God. That's another part of this movie.
Yeah. No, but for real, yeah. Also, Spielberg's always had a fixation and fascination on the nuclear family, and so this is the most interesting take on that in the first hour for him. It's such a wild departure from that.
What does nuclear family mean?
Just the 2.1 kids, picket fence, the American ideal versus the dirty atheistic commies and their
like
premarital
fucking
sex.
Norman Rockwell shit.
I got you.
A man and a wife and 2 kids and no fucking black people
and a dog and no black.
Don't worry, darling, but good.
Yeah, don't worry, darling is very.
But like he's Spielberg's always been fascinated with that.
Don't worry, darling. There should be a comma in that, unless you're telling somebody, "Don't worry, darling." But if you're speaking directly to darling, there should be a comma in that time.
Okay.
Sorry.
There is a comma.
There's a comma. Okay. Don't worry, darling.
Yeah, I'm sure there is.
I don't know, man.
Can we talk about the best character in the whole fucking movie, Mr. Teddy?
Dude,
Teddy
is cool at first I was skeptical. It's like, what is this Seth MacFarlane?
I love him I've loved him since I was fucking very young.
I'm like, dude, Teddy is the shit.
No, it's his voice and his personality that makes
his voice is the guy who used to do He-Man and fucking old school cartoons, G.I. Joe. That's the same voice actor. And it's like oddly soothing, but then he also says like kind of some fucked up shit like, don't drop me, David, I'll break. And like,
well, he's just being real, dude.
He is the realest motherfucker in the game.
I was watching this with a friend last night, and he's like, if Teddy dies right here, like when they get picked up by the moon, he's like, if Teddy dies, I'm turning it off right now. Like he was literally tearing up. He's like, if Teddy dies, and then like he lands and runs
Teddy's
off.
The
And he's
true
like, oh,
goat,
thank
my
God.
guy.
Dude, that's a practical effect in a lot of those shots too.
Oh yeah.
They built a robot, and they said it was like the hardest thing they'd ever done. And they worked on Jurassic Park and stuff. They were like, the T-Rex in Jurassic Park had like 40 points of articulation. This had 50. It's a teddy, and it has to be compressed into like a 2-foot tall teddy bear.
And watching it, I was like, man, I want my own Teddy. And then I realized that's kind of like human arrogance for me to wish for a toy that's sentient just to be my fucking plaything.
Think about this shit though. Like Teddy might have the most sentience out of all of them. He chooses David. There's a point where he's like, they're trying to get Teddy to go one area, and like to me or the David, and they're arguing over him, and he's like, I'm just gonna run out. Like, help me, get me out of here, mom. Like he's not programmed to only be designed to love one individual.
And he's been there a long time too. So it's
fucking
kind of
crazy to me. It's like David was designed to be loved, and imprint on one person.
Yeah.
But David can choose his loyalties.
Teddy? You mean
Teddy?
Oh yeah, Teddy can choose his fucking loyalties.
I don't think Teddy does choose his loyalties, and I think that's what that scene shows. I think it's algorithmically he has 2 equal values, like in terms of like programming.
Oh yeah, that's a way of thinking about
values,
it.
So he can't choose, and when a new variable enters the equation, he chooses that because his logic gates are stuck. Because he's programmed to not love one more than the other. He is programmed to comfort. Casher, are you there? Your
Casher got pissed off.
No, he's not taking the Teddy slander.
Is that what happened?
I don't know.
My internet connection went.
I think it would have been a better movie if Teddy fought Mark Wahlberg at one point. But that's just me.
I want to see the Ted cut where they just replaced Teddy with CGI.
Where he's doing cocaine with fucking Flash Gordon.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, there's a point where he's also like trying to find David at the flesh fair, and he's picked up by a human girl. And really, in reality, he could have just stayed with that human girl. But the like, and not dealt with any of the complications of the rest of the movie.
Yeah, but because of that fucking imprinting chip or
But
whatever.
does he have the imprinting? Can he imprint on more than one person?
No,
because initially that was. But listen, initially that was the like whatever his name was, Martin's toy. That was his. It was imprinted on him, and then he should have tried to have found his way back to Martin if he was imprinted like that.
No, he was imprinted to the mom.
Oh, was he? Teddy?
It sounds
maybe
like
it's just to the family in general.
I'm talking about David.
No,
I know
he's
that.
talking about Teddy.
I'm talking about when the little girl finds Teddy.
Oh,
He could have
okay.
just
Yeah.
like left and gone and have like a non-complicated life, but he chooses to go and still help David and still try to find the blue fairy. He even is the one at the end who suggests, hey, let's go back out and go to the blue fairy's down there. Let's still go out there. And they ride together down to find the statue of the blue fairy where they're inevitably trapped. I don't know. It seems like he's got more sentience than most of the robots we see in the movie.
Yeah, I think that's
Even more so than David because of the imprintation.
I think
He's
they
got
keep
more
it low key
sentience
on
than I do.
purpose. That's
He
interesting.
has a wider. He doesn't, I think, imprint in the same way. He doesn't desire their love. I think he's just there to kind of serve and comfort.
He's kind of like Jiminy Cricket. If you think, like, there's a lot of Pinocchio references in this.
Well,
I'm not
sure,
being
yeah,
funny,
no, that's a good point.
But if you think about it,
that kind of, I haven't seen Pinocchio. Since I was
he's
a
like
kid,
Jiminy
though.
Cricket. He's the conscious, the person he's the common sense for David.
Right.
Yeah.
Although I will say, and this
Sci-fi
isn't
fairy
bragging,
tale.
I'm just saying it's so thematically appropriate. When they handed that book and she like looked at him and you didn't know what the book was yet, I was like, that's got to be Pinocchio because that's this movie.
Yeah,
It's so thematically appropriate. And even in Pinocchio, if we're talking about roles and what makes us human, Pinocchio becomes a real boy kind of when he accepts his role in human society and like becomes a good boy and good functioning member of society. Which I actually listened to Guillermo del Toro on a podcast on a What the Fuck with Mark Maron recently, because he's making a Pinocchio movie.
which looks sick.
And Del Toro's like, we got to change that shit. Where if he's a good boy, he becomes real. He's like, I don't like that. He's like such a Del Toro way of like, nah, fuck that. That's dumb.
Based
Based as fuck.
I was thinking about Del Toro too when I watched this movie, and I just had the weird thought. I was like, I'd like to have a Stanley Kubrick biopic, but Del Toro plays Kubrick because it's just totally against who Del Toro is.
Because
But I would just
he's-
love to see
It's
it.
just Kubrick with a thick Mexican accent.
Yeah, I don't know. I would just love to see it.
The I will say that at that part with the little girl at the flesh fair, it's like, you know, rednecks are getting hype over destroying AIs and just
Destroying
that
the
whole thing is
liberal AI.
fascinating that can exist in a world that's sophisticated enough to create these creatures or these, you know, robots, which I guess is the point. I don't know, but like,
History repeats itself.
I don't know.
But robots benefit the upper class.
Yeah.
And it's all about, you know, quantifying sentience, and it's shown all of this of the point of the flesh fair is all shown in two shots, and it's simply the little girl looking at David and him looking back at her, and it's just this quick exchange, and everything I was thinking about from the flesh fair sequence was all condensed into that shot between them, and I think that's really brilliant. And I don't know
What shot, what was condensed in what shot?
just like quantifying sentience of life forms and robots versus humans, and
Because you can't tell.
and at the flesh fair where rednecks are going fucking ape shit over destroying these things, even though we live in a world sophisticated enough to create these things, and it's just all
Well, again,
one
the
thing.
reason, like, those are all the people that I think have been negatively affected.
Yeah, they've
by
been
the
like
rise of
displaced, out of
automation.
jobs. They're
Like
And
factory
or-
work. I mean, we got robots replacing factory workers right
Well,
now.
Like we see the glamorized version of what we're not coming into a family that's like living out in an
Struggling.
apartment. They're living in a nice home. with
yeah,
the
real nice.
real
means
nice
to be able
fucking
to
home.
buy, you know, or
That's
buy
another thing.
sentience.
That's
That's
another
another
thing.
Able to have a
Mark.
stay-at-home mom.
That's
How
another
many
thing.
real gigolos have been displaced by these sex robots?
No, but that's another Spielberg thing. It's like a very rich fucking fan. Like
That's all Kubrick, though.
I know, but like I can see why he was attracted to the project. You know,
Yeah.
it's the same shit with Empire of the Sun, you know, with their house but
money, even something like Poltergeist, you know.
The flesh fairs definitely show
Poltergeist.
there's definitely a class divide in the world.
Yeah.
Sure, but maybe if they had universal income, it would be fixed. Yang Gang 2024. Let's go.
Marxists, let's go, Marxy boys.
No. But I think it's time to ask the real question. It's the future, and there's robot prostitutes. What's your next move?
Smash.
Yeah, it doesn't even matter. Just smash.
Yeah, what are you talking about?
Because that female lover bot you see briefly is fine.
Oh
as
yeah, she's
fuck.
hot.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
I think if I ever wanted to get away with murder, smash and then murder. Like that's
What?
kind of what happens.
You would live out your like rape murder fantasies? Is that what you're
Oh, that's exactly what I'm saying. No, I'm saying I'm pointing out the way we're introduced to Gigolo Joe is, you know, he smashes that one lady. He clicks his neck. He's got, you know, fancy music playing,
which is unnecessary. You think
it looks like he has Tourette's.
Okay,
that's just a complete. I think it's funny. I just think it's funny when you have to like visualize computer stuff in movies,
and do the same thing in Star Wars with the Force. You know, putting
like
your hand out,
like send out a Bluetooth signal. They wouldn't have to like.
Yeah. And then he goes to the next one. He goes to his regular customer, and her husband had figured out, which then goes into the place like, is it really cheating if you're fucking? It's just a sex toy. Are you really cheating if you're fucking an object?
Yeah, but
he kills her anyway.
I don't know.
I don't know. Or fleshlights cheating?
Casher, that's like another movie entirely that should be made. Is just like a really serious but like slightly futuristic drama, like a family drama.
Well, it's not cheating if the dildo's the same size and color as my penis.
I do want to point out, this is a little bit off topic, but it's still on the movie. I think my favorite line in the whole movie is Gigolo Joe's last to "I am," and then he's letting go. I was.
Yeah.
That shit sends chills through my body. It's it's 4 words.
That's what I'm saying. This guy is like
the butthole.
There's different levels of sentience in this movie.
But he's learning more with David.
It fucks with me because he's just a prostitute robot, and yet he obviously has his own feelings and desires.
Well, he's learning more with David. He's, you know, David, he's trying to help him. You don't realize it, but he's feeling empathy and sympathy for another person in a place that, because regardless if David has the sentience or not, his brain is always going to work as though as a child.
Yeah.
And so he's got a mentor and someone who cares about him in Gigolo Joe.
Which is fucked that he can't. They could have fixed everything if they would have just been like, okay, now we get to upgrade David to the 16-year-old model or something
David
like that.
too.
You know? Advance him a little bit or something. I don't know. Yeah, that's fucked. He's stuck in that.
He's stuck as a child. He's always going to have childlike wonderment, and that's kind of what doesn't work. And then whenever he finally meets, his creator, he has that fucking insane breakdown because he's not unique.
Yeah.
Doesn't everybody kind of have that at some point as a child?
Oh yeah.
You kind of especially our generation.
You can have it as an adult.
I mean, as an adult. No, I've been struggling a lot. I mean, especially the past few months since I've been back in the States, because of a big transition for me. And I'm like, is this all there is? Is this my fucking life? Is it just
feeling that
podcasting movies and typing in a fucking keyboard for money? You know, I have that.
Wait, you guys get paid for the podcast?
Huh?
I said, you get paid for the podcast?
No.
We'll talk about that later.
At this rate, in 30 years, we'll make $10 off this podcast. back when the super alien-looking robots are unearthing us from the ice, we'll have. Don't they call the money new bucks? They're like, it's
E-bucks,
10 new
I
bucks.
think.
Yeah.
You just call them new bucks.
I think it's E-bucks. I thought.
No, it's new bucks.
Oh, it's new bucks. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You can't just call them bucks.
You can't. I like shitty names like that for things like in Avatar, the unobtainable, unobtainium. You know, it's classic. I like that shit. It's cheesy.
Yeah.
Currency names, yeah.
But we talk about how like evolving sentience though, and then at the end we get proof of that with the specialists. We see that the artificial intelligence have evolved to a point where they are fully self-aware, self-sustaining. They are the prominent life forms on Earth.
And I want to say something. I heard that I had a weird relationship to the last of that because I heard there were aliens in this movie. That's what I heard.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm watching this movie and it doesn't come out and say it, which honestly, maybe it should have to help audiences understand. But I'm like, wait, these aren't aliens. These are mechas. These are hyper advanced mechas who have upgraded themselves past, because there's that line earlier, Joe is saying they hate us because we'll outlive them, we'll outlast them. So that's one thing about this movie that was so polarizing that I think a lot of audiences just didn't get that those were robots at the end.
I
didn't.
I certainly didn't whenever I was a kid.
They're
Yeah, when I
certainly
first watched
scary
it-
enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I
This
first
movie's
watched
big
it, I
in
just
Japan, by the way. They
assumed-
like robots.
I just assumed they were super advanced alien beings when I was a kid. I didn't know. The concept of evolving that far as a mecha, I didn't get it as a kid. So that adds
I mean, they might
to-
as well be alien. They're alien to us.
They're alien enough.
Well,
Yeah,
they
they're
literally
even-
say
they're-
like these are the last people that I've seen. Like when they unfreeze David and Teddy, they were like,
they're the
they've-
last to have
they've
ever
been
seen
around.
people.
yeah,
Yeah.
they were
Yeah,
around
that they
people,
found so far, at least.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah.
which is
the,
crazy.
but
is crazy.
obviously they've advanced enough to have, they're fully intelligent
hallucinations.
beings.
Do you think they fuck?
They still have empathy,
Yeah.
obviously,
No.
because they care about David and his desires.
Do they?
I think so. Yeah, personally.
Or
Or
David's
are
just
they-
eternally trapped in his own brain.
Or are they
Kinda
just trying to get
horrifying shit.
information about their creators?
That's what I was thinking. Is that they are?
I think they can do
doing
both.
this-
I think they could have done it they could have just done it in an easier, more fucked up way. I think if they
Yeah.
didn't give a shit, but they did.
They probe Teddy's ass with their long fingers.
They did. They
Okay.
didn't want to. I mean, maybe they just wanted to observe David and his routines.
Yeah. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, but they don't actually give a shit about his happiness.
I think they do.
Yeah.
They took the effort to bring back his mom for one last day, which is, it goes back to that
Apparently hard. for them.
surrealist, dreamy, weirdo filmmaking that I love so much. Makes me feel like I'm in a dream. That's what I love about movies. That's why
It
I
is
watch
very
cinema.
2001 where the aliens build the hotel room for that David.
Yeah,
And
almost like
then these
a.
robots build
It's
the.
almost like a spiritual successor scene to that scene.
Yes, absolutely.
And again, people were confused. They were very convinced that this was Spielberg slapping on his like sentimental shit.
Nope,
This-
100%
this is
Kubrick.
Which
Kubrick,
I
yeah.
don't think it's schmaltzy at all. With the
I don't think it is. I think the implications are fucking dark.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like it taps on that like being stuck in your own brain type shit, like and not getting out. Like
Yeah,
that's
and
like one
also
of my
just,
fears is like just
I could
going
not handle
crazy
the
and only
thought
living inside
that-
here.
I couldn't handle as a kid the thought that 2,000 years later, not Americans, humans have been
Just
long
the
gone.
Americans.
The only real humans.
Yeah, every other country is fine. That's just America.
The rest of
with
them
the
can
mechas and
fucking
everything.
die.
No, it's just,
Do you hear us, China?
that was
You're
too
going
much for
down.
me.
Japan is still
I,
out there street racing cars and drifting.
Dude, Japan already has all the robots.
People at home, when I was in third grade, I had a complete existential freak out and breakdown, and I couldn't get over the concept of eternity, like going to heaven and it just going on and on and on and on and on forever. It just freaked me the fuck out once I really tried to wrap my head around it. And I kept asking my mom, well, who created God? And she's like, oh, he's always been around. He always has been and always will be. And I was like, what? And so I stayed in my fucking room for like a month, not wanting to go out because I was so depressed and freaked out over this shit. My mind completely broke. And so I kept trying to look into it and stuff. And I don't know. So yeah, eternity and afterlife and shit like that, just existence scared me. So when I see David's brain breaking in this movie over similar things,
That part when he says my brain is falling
yeah,
out.
not on like a
fuck.
religious level, but on his it's close enough to religion as it could be with the fairy tale and the blue fairy and all that. I resonated with that as a kid when I was like 12, 13 when I watched this movie, and I think that's what freaked me out, is that it made me relapse in those ideas that I wasn't able to handle right as a kid. And so now, obviously, watching it as a 28-year-old man, I think the ending is fucking badass and baller. And because, you know, when I was a kid and a teenager, I did think it should end when he's like it's submerged, but that's a pussy way of thinking.
It's one of those endings like they actually go for it and they challenge like
Yeah,
every
yeah.
viewer's thought. Like if you want
I think-
to watch a movie, like Scott said at the beginning of the cast, do you want to watch and actually feel and think? The ending does that. It doesn't just cheapen it and cut off, you know.
Right.
Whether you like it or not, it's powerful.
And
it's
that's because we're
poetic.
patrician.
Yeah.
We want to but we want movies that fucking go for it, even if it isn't entirely successful.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, as long as you
for
try
sure.
something. If you
I want
try
a movie.
something,
Yeah, I want a movie that just says, "Let's fucking do it." I have
You know
a
what it
vision.
does?
But also, this movie shows that Steven Spielberg can do whatever the fuck he wants.
Yeah. It also
Jurassic Park.
it reminds me of oh shit, I lost my train of thought.
Do you think
Oh,
he's
well.
still making money from Jurassic Park like the new
Yeah.
ones?
Oh hell yeah, dude.
Dude, yeah,
Well,
he's balling out.
maybe. Well, I mean, it's
he's gonna
Michael
make Schindler's
Crichton's
List
book.
too.
Do you think he has? Do you think he has like a 0.5% from action figures from that?
Yeah, something. He's got some sort of tie-in for sure. I like yeah, like I said, the end of this movie could have been done a little more Spielberg-y. Do you think that would have hurt it if it would have been like, I don't know what I'm saying.
That's the thing, though. The things we think are Spielbergy in this movie are not Spielberg's.
No, okay,
It's the
here's what I'm
craziest
asking.
concept to me.
Here's the thing. Because we thought some of this shit, like I definitely thought when I was 14, 15 that some of the more Spielberg stuff was Spielberg stuff when it was Kubrick. If Kubrick would have made this movie, what do you think actually would have been different?
That's one of the greatest what ifs in fucking probably movie cinema history.
Yeah.
We'll never
at
get
first-
a true answer to that.
Well, I
don't
know
think
it's just like at
answer.
first you would think maybe it would have been actually darker because you know
Even
he has-
Kubrick was even the one that created fucking Teddy.
I know.
Like
Teddy is in the original short story too.
Yeah, that's true. They would.
I think one of the things that Spielberg said that they took out were a bunch of Gigolo Joe sex scenes.
Yeah.
Damn it! Fuck.
Well, 'cause that's
Give me
that
the
was my first
uncut
thought. It was
version.
like Rue City would have been a little racier, probably, you know. But it
They
doesn't.
had to CGI out to get a PG-13 rating. They had to CGI out a giant penis building. I swear to God.
Okay. See,
True.
but it doesn't have to be R-rated, A Clockwork Orange dystopia to work, though. It
No.
works just fine as it does, which is really
Man,
cool.
We didn't touch much about the set pieces on this.
Yeah,
but
I was gonna bring that up. I wanted
Oh,
to
sure,
bring
yeah.
up, like, the
Going
production
into Rouge
design
City,
is
they have the big mouths. That's one of my
Garish.
favorite scenes.
Fucking
They're
awesome.
driving through, they were like, "All right, and they drive through. I was like, anything
Very
Spielberg,
early
that's
2000s
Spielberg.
teenager looking guys in the car.
But I want to talk about the Manhattan at the end. They have those giant lion
Yeah.
statues that are pouring water from their mouths. Where the fuck did those come from? Did they do that first?
That dude is a fucking arrogant prick, and he built a monument to himself and his company in
After
the
the city
ruins
was
of
destroyed?
Manhattan.
Yeah.
Yeah, in
That's
the ruins of
crazy.
He's
Manhattan.
Tyrell.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty straightforward for him to do that. That he's the kind of guy who would do that.
But then you see why he created David in the first place. We didn't really touch on that.
Oh yeah,
You
his dead
see that
son.
his
Yeah,
son has passed
it makes
away,
sense.
and it's in the image of it, like it's just bringing Jesus back.
Because God made man in his own image.
Well,
Oh,
also
no,
you
it's
can
a-
see that he, in trying to recreate his dead son, he probably looked over certain things, which leads to all the faults with David and his programming, and you know, there
But that was
should have
also
been-
the first David. I wonder what the other
know.
David would be like.
yeah, that's the
it'd be
problem.
like Chucky.
They shouldn't have put the first prototype with a real family. They should have put him in a testing thing first, but you know,
Well, that's the
Arrogance.
thing. They're like, yeah, this is what makes them really need this is because their son's in a coma. So let's give it to the one that actually would, really be affected if something fucked up happened. To the
Yeah,
robot.
yeah.
I bet this movie is hard for parents to watch. For certain
Yeah.
parents.
Wouldn't
Because
know.
it's kind of the
I've got-
idea of
I've got
and
a
this is actually
million
one
poppers
reason
with
why I
strap.
don't want kids, because I'm just afraid I would just traumatize whatever I bring into this world, is the idea that you bring this sentient being into this world and it imprints on you and what you say and do to it will affect it forever is kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
And knowing that you're doing this is like a psychological, egotistical need to propagate the species. I get nervous when I hurt my niece's feelings. I'm like, is that going to be a therapy session in the future? What did I do?
You know what's even more scary about imprintation? In the Twilight series, Jacob the werewolf imprints on a pregnant Bella's baby so that baby grows up and wants to fuck him.
Yeah, as soon as it comes out of the womb, it looks at Jacob and knows what must be done.
It's so weird.
That is fucking insane. But I will say there's a couple of things in this movie that, because Kubrick was working on it in like the mid 80s, there's a couple of things I think that stuck around from the mid 80s. Primarily the fucking motorcycle dudes with the fucking lights on them.
That.
You mean
That
Tron
shit was
guy?
a little too
It's cheesy.
ridiculous.
There's
Yeah,
some
cheesy.
garish shit in this movie.
But that definitely, it felt like it was out of like some random ass 80s movie I would have rented.
Yeah, like a Mad Max spinoff.
Yeah, like some bullshit. Yeah, I don't know. That was a little strange.
Just Tron.
I'm happy for it. I thought those things were badass and they scared the shit out of me as a kid. Scared the absolute tits off me as a kid.
Those look like street bikes, but they're on that terrain. It doesn't matter.
And they also have.
What about the fucking design of this is the most impractical car design I've ever seen in a movie. They're all.
I don't know, man. It got off road. It got off road pretty well.
Yeah, but it's like one gust of wind would like spin that.
Have you not seen the three wheels? Like they make those today.
they
No,
exist.
here's the problem. They foolishly thought that we would, as a
Still be
society,
driving?
No, we as a society would care more about cool maximalist aesthetics instead of what's convenient and minimalist and bullshit, which is now unfortunately a problem.
I feel like we're coming around on it though.
I don't think so. All the cars and fucking buildings in the world now.
Well, I think that's just
bullshit.
economics though.
Yeah,
You're
well,
trying-
fuck economics. I want shit to look cool, man. I want shit to look like Rue City, dog.
Fuck the investors. I want giant dick buildings.
I need Dr. No. I need fucking Gene Kelly on a artificial sign dancing, trying to bring you.
Yeah, man.
Jaws
this is
19
fine.
poster from Back to the Future.
Fuck the fucking Elon Musk Cybertruck. That's PS1 looking ass motherfucker.
It's like they didn't have enough polygons to render a better.
Yeah,
looking-
dude.
It's 3D modeled from the ground
The
up.
textures just have to load in, my guy. Just stay there for a second.
Yeah, it's like an old Unreal Engine games. The textures would still be loading.
Shit, my fucking Xbox still does that on Fortnite.
I was going to say,
Yeah,
that's what it
no,
looks
mine
like
does.
every time I boot up COD and I haven't dropped into the war zone yet.
Yeah, it's like, hold on, shaders have got to load.
Fucking ghetto ass shit.
I was actually wondering if David would be really good at video games for that reason. He'd just be like aimbotting, just like
Yeah, dude. Fuck
he'd be a
all that.
Fortnite kid.
No,
He starts
Teddy
Fortnite
would be
dancing
real
the
good.
movie. That's if that movie was made today. Starts
I
flossing.
want to see David do the floss.
Dude, fucking put David in Fortnite. Put Teddy in Fortnite, dude.
Oh,
Hell
yeah.
yeah.
There's
As
actually
small
a
as
cool
he
teddy
is.
bear thing in Fortnite right now.
It's not cool. I don't like the teddy bear shit.
I like it.
That's a different conversation.
All right, the Fortnite chat. Let's go.
I did notice that as much as I've advanced as a Kino connoisseur,
Asshole. Oh.
Have you advanced?
Essentially.
the movie ended and
As much of I advanced as a patrician and regressed as an adult human being. Go
yeah,
on, sorry.
the ending that scared me so much as a kid. Obviously, like I said, I enjoyed it a lot more now, but it still gave me this cold sweat feeling when it ended, which I find to be, I guess, profound in a way. I don't know. The final moments with him and his mom before they go both to sleep is haunting and beautiful.
It makes
David
me
dies at the end, right?
fucking sad. It just reminds me
Yeah.
of my mom.
Here's the
I,
thing. You know, I was thinking about that final line. Ben Kingsley is the fucking narrator, by the way. At
When
the
it's
end,
convenient.
he says he goes to that place where all dreams come from, which is death, which, if you think about it, all dreams, all inventions, all of human society is really just a giant avoidance of death.
Well, yeah.
Even creating art that'll last for generations is trying to achieve immortality.
It's desperate, but it's true.
It's desperate, but it's true. Like my love life.
I mean, I feel the same way. I'm like, fuck, I want to do at least something that's lasting.
If I tell jokes and people laugh, maybe I will matter.
And it's just like, I get into this quandary of if I just make films that are just entertainment and don't make people ask big questions like this, is it still worth a damn? You know? And then I'm like, if I'm not making a documentary that like changes people's ideas, am I just a worthless piece of shit just making art to entertain people?
No,
You know?
I think do what makes you happy. Try to bring happiness to others.
I mean, that's
and
like,
that's
you
what
know,
I try to do.
if Spider-Man is like Spider-Man not high art enough to
No, I just get like worried about what I'm gonna leave behind and get up in my own ass about
do you
it.
think Moonman's doing it?
Maybe, who knows?
Maybe.
Hey, that's that showcases what it was like in mid 2015.
No, that movie, as niche as it is, has a place, and it has a niche, and it's important to my life.
It has a place in my anus. So look, I'll tell you guys this. Yesterday I watched 2 movies. I watched Andrei Rublev and I watched AI.
What is Andrei Rublev?
It's Tarkovsky's second film, 3.5 hour long Russian movie. So I'll say this:
Sounds like a fun day, Sam.
I watched a masterpiece, and then I also watched a Russian movie.
Wow.
Yeah, that's fair.
I will say, yeah.
Took me
I don't
8 hours
think-
to watch.
I'll-
Andrei Rublev.
I don't think the movie's perfect, but I do think it's it's more of a masterpiece than I thought when I was a little kid / teenager.
I think it is Spielberg's most underrated film,
Yeah,
possibly that I've
that's
seen.
fair. That's very strong.
I haven't seen like Lincoln and some of the other.
I think it's a great movie. And
let me
It's
ask you, go
overlooked.
back to the very beginning. You said you watched us 3 times as a kid, as a young adult, and as a
No, he said his opinion changed 3 times.
and
Yeah.
your
Watched
opinion
it more.
changed 3 times.
yeah,
So you have your opinion now, which is positive, and your first opinion, which was like
Unsure
wigging
positive.
out.
no, the first opinion was a mix of I really liked a lot of this, but I'm unsure of what I think of some parts. And then the second time around, I watched it as a teenager. I was like, I guess I doubled down. I really liked the first parts, and then the last part I was adamantly against. I think I was still fighting against that. And now I like all of it.
A lot of critics,
especially
there's a
Disney.
lot of critics that have gone back and revamped their look
Yeah,
at it. Even
so it's
fucking
not just
Roger
me.
Ebert, dude. Even Roger Ebert initially gave it 3 stars and went back like 11 years later and was like, "No, this is a 4 out of 4." Like
Sometimes
it's
that happens with movies, man.
It takes a few watches for some movies, and I think that's what makes a movie good is if you can develop more with the movie. And this is again one of my all-time favorite science fiction films, probably top 10 science fiction films for me. I
This is
grew
a
up,
childhood favorite. Childhood
I grew up renting the fuck out of this and not understanding a whole lot when I was a kid, and then coming back and
There's
really
plenty.
enjoying
I've
it.
said this before plenty of times, but there's a lot of my favorite movies of all time are because I watched it a second or third time. Thank God I did. Otherwise, 2001 and Blade Runner wouldn't be in my top 10, which they are.
Or Judy's Knocker 4.
Okay, that's a deep
Backyard
cut that
Milkers
no one will
6.
ever understand. That's okay.
Shout out to Judy's Knockers.
Oh, okay. Mark Kermode, do you know who he is? He apologized for his initial review.
Yeah.
After talking to Spielberg about it. The
Which is probably a hard thing to do as a critic.
yeah, well, you know,
Everybody's
Are critics not people?
he's
No,
not
not really.
Mark Kermode's no
Here's
Armand
the
White.
I'm friends with
Here's the
Armand White
thing.
on fucking Facebook.
do the AIs in this movie have more sentience than film critics?
No.
Depends on what film critic. According to M. Night Shyamalan, yes. Because in Lady in the Water, he has this like film critic character that he.
Oh,
kills on.
dude. Oh, I can't stand how. I don't understand how.
Let's do a
Patricia
Lady in the Water
Filbosing-
cast.
Patricia Filbosing dick rides M. Night, and I'm like, dude, he's had more misses than hits, but whatever.
I was just talking about this with my friend last night because Knock at the Cabin actually looks pretty decent, but then I'm like, how the fuck is Shyamalan still relevant in the 2020s?
I mean, I think
Like, where does he
Split
keep
was
getting his
successful.
money?
The Visit was successful. I don't
I
know.
would say
I
The
think
Visit was very successful too.
I did
he
not like
honestly
it.
works more. He works better as like a B movie, like pulpy kind of director.
Yeah,
I
well,
think.
He
the
he
problem
works
is-
better when he has someone helping him write and direct because
Yes.
he can't do both.
He works better when he quits after making Signs.
Yeah. Well,
Whether
yeah.
good or bad. No, the problem
I
is
like Signs.
not the
I
problem.
kind of like Signs.
The whether he makes good or bad movies. The point is that he makes movies that people like to talk about.
Yeah,
So,
that's fair.
Like The Happening.
Effective.
You guys remember that one?
yeah.
I like
Oh
it, actually.
boy,
People.
just didn't get it, dude. The Happening, dude. Understood,
About fucking
misunderstood
Nick.
masterpiece, dog.
Yeah,
This
okay.
is, by the way, this is completely side note, but have you guys seen Minority Report?
I
Yeah.
need to.
It's great.
I really like Minority Report. It's much more of a thriller than this. It is have that. It's Philip K. Dick story, so it has that philosophical aspect.
Also,
I would
Tom Cruise.
probably,
Can't go
I
wrong with Tom Cruise.
really dig Minority Report. Although I would probably rate this a bit higher. Even Minority Report's more of a thrill.
I
If you Scott, if you want an anime that is very similar, it's an anime called Psychopaths, which is like a neo-noir Minority Report.
I've heard of it.
It's fucking dope. I would check that out. It's very similar.
Y'all want to know what my
Minority
go-to as a
Report
kid
and-
was? My go-to double feature with AI. I would always
What
watch
is it?
Bicentennial Man afterwards.
yeah.
Oh yeah. See, I thought about that while watching it. Bicentennial Man to me was like a not as good version of this movie.
Yeah, but
only
it's,
seen
it's
parts
got
of
a
it
it's got a
on TV.
special place in my heart.
kinda know
Because
how it is.
every time I go like 6-7 years without watching it, I'm like, oh, maybe this is like a misunderstood thing. Like maybe I should go back and rewatch. It'll be better. And every time I watch it, it has so much potential, and then it like falters out. Just kind of like, well,
Just give me Android Mrs. Doubtfire.
it doesn't go as hard as it should, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
But no, but
watched a
it's
lot.
got that
growing up.
same like early 2000s look though. Yeah.
Plasticky. Like the
Right.
the Santa Claus 2, the robot Santa. It's kinda that.
So
Yeah.
what, final thoughts? Artificial intelligence, 0 out of 10.
Okay.
Here's
good
the thing,
one.
Not
this
enough
movie-
Android tits.
Define my expectations in a good way. If I had had time this morning, I would have rewatched it this morning after
Wow.
watching it last night.
That's awesome.
Just like I was to the point. I was already. It was like 1 a.m., so I had to go to bed. I was almost to the point where like I could rewatch that movie right now,
Yeah,
Wow.
which
That's
is very
cool as
rare for me to
fuck.
want.
high praise. High
That
praise.
is very. There's like a couple of movies in my life I've been like that.
It's certainly
So
a 5.
I'm still digesting it, and the whole, just the ending, dude. The ending is them looking for their creators, looking for God, like we have been for meaning, like we have been all of human history. And it's like, and I really think people thinking it's aliens, yeah, fucking morons. You know,
Hey
get
man, I
it.
was like 8 years old.
Yeah,
So
I was a
please,
fucking
yeah,
kid, dude.
Casher. You
They look like the
moron.
fucking aliens from Star Wars, and they.
I
scared
didn't
me,
understand
okay?
that scene at all as a kid, man. All it did was make me miss
Yeah.
my mama.
All right.
Yeah, I'm really glad you enjoyed it, Scott. I was wondering, I was like, this might hit just right for Scott. We'll see. So I was surprised you hadn't seen it before. So that's awesome.
I am too.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. And thanks for listening, everybody.
Stephen
Yes,
Midberg.
I think next after this cast we'll be getting into some more spookier stuff because
Spooky,
October.
scary,
It's
scary
spooky
skeletons.
season.
Lost says
Spooky
spooky
season approaches. Fuck what y'all been